You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com.
The world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Boy, gang stalkers, the very nature of them and what's really going on. As I go through this, the simplicity is that mean people suck. I could just say that and end the show and take questions or whatever, but there's a lot more to this. What goes around comes around. Nothing good is going to come out of what they do, and certainly you as the victims, the ones who are on the receiving end of this terrible scenario, are just, we're all in this together. And so those who are doing this, I'm just trying to lay it out what's going on. Now, as I go through this, I want you to understand that we're talking about humans. We're not talking about hybrids or clones, reptilians. We're not talking about some of the other things, and I will cover that in tomorrow's show. And hopefully that'll make a little more sense to you. All right, turn the volume down here. Now, I just want you to comprehend that it's not a straightforward scenario. There's several agencies involved in bringing these people in. They're people of all different race, religions, ages, types of backgrounds, whether they're from the rich or from a poor background, and so the selection that has been, taken place to bring these people in is quite complex. And the reason is that they're also doing research, wondering and trying to run the numbers to who can do what, who will do what. Who's capable of doing something to an extreme that would inflict harm and pain onto another person. And many studies have been done on that, and this is at a level that really shows us that we are in the end times. Now, I'm probably going to take this show and turn it into a YouTube video, since it's going to be dedicated to understanding the gang stalker themselves. And so at the end of this, I'll be taking questions. If you've noted, I've opened up the chat room, and towards the end of the show, I'm going to be taking questions. Now, I'm just going to see how it goes here. I've got a lot of material. I've definitely got enough material to cover both shows, but I want to try and squeeze this stuff in. And I grabbed 2 hours. I don't think I'll go 2 hours, but we'll just see. Either way, I want to answer your questions. Now, as I get into this, I just want you to understand the nature of what's really going on here. And that's all I'm trying to do, but there's a lot of material, so just be patient as I get through this. Gang stalkers, who are they? How did they get this job? I mean, could it just be anybody? Why would anyone want to do this? Do they know really what they're doing, and do they really care? Well, could they themselves be under duress that they too are also gang stalked? Okay, you can have the gang stalker gang stalking the gang stalk. You can have borderline. I've talked about that. It's rare, but it's an actual case. So who's training them? Who's coaching them? Do they get rewards out of this? Are they mentally ill? Are they an average person? Are they out of the military? Are they from the CIA? Have they been monarched, MK Ultra? Are they satanically, ritually abused? Are they specific of having a post-traumatic stress disorder? Are they demonized? Are they demon-possessed? Are they chipped? Well, in reality, it's all of this, every bit of it, because there's such a hodgepodge of personalities that they're using to do this. But, when it all comes down to it, they're willing to do it. And so this is what I guess I'm trying to focus on. And so there you go. All right. So again, later tonight I'll be answering the questions as they come. And the reason that I did this tonight, I was going to just be taking questions, but the questions that already came to me in the past 24 hours was really based on this. And so I thought that I would address this specifically. Now, I've talked about psychotronics. We've talked about gang stalking. We've had guests on. But again, I want to get down to more specifics about the individuals that are actually doing this. Okay? All right. So again, this is part 1, and part 2 will be on Friday. Now, before I get really going here, I want to thank you for your support. The only reason I'm able to be here is this is a listener-supported broadcast, and so those who have been with me all along, I thank you, because this has been a very busy week. Well, the past couple of weeks have been, but more and more that our TIs, targeted individuals, are finding out through blogs and just the name being passed around, and so I'm getting really busy. Now, if you're from overseas, generally what I do is I use Skype. Now, someone had left a message, and the number that came up and then the number they left, I have not been able to decipher it to the area code per the country. I've tried, and so if you happen to be listening and you left a message and I haven't called you back, that's what's going on. I can't for the life of me figure that thing out. I'm usually pretty good at it. I can get right to the country, get your area code, and get you called back, but this one's got me stumped, and I don't know why. So there's something I'm missing here. And the shows generally are Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, I'm not sure. Maybe next week or so, I may go ahead and just go Monday through Friday and do an hour each night. We'll see. Again, I've talked about having more guests, and so that makes it busy. I'm trying to do deliverance too. I'm trying to pray for people, taking calls, answering emails. I'm kind of a man stop here, and it's a lot of work. So we'll just see how that goes. All right, the subject of gang stalking. All right, it can be one person or a group of people. Generally, it's a group. It's a predatory involvement when it comes to gang stalking. And it involves specific techniques, mostly those that have been trained. It isn't like they just turn them loose to go harass somebody. There is a method to the madness. There is a calculated example for them to go by so they have results, because this is a controlled scientific experiment. Even though they have their basics already laid out, those things that have been in Berkeley at the college there, the DARPA, they've already got this figured out, but the human nature itself can be very complex. And so what they're doing is they're gathering data. Now, this also is once they start the program, they have all these gang stalkers, all these people they really don't know what else to do with. Many of them do not complete out their term, and I'm going to get into that, and it does not end well for them. So if you happen to be someone that's in this organization and you're listening, you need to understand that just like those who sell their soul, that Lucifer will put you out like a cigarette. when the time comes, they will eliminate you. And as I describe those things of Yuma, the FEMA camps and some of the other places, they can run people through there and eliminate them in a heartbeat. And again, we've talked about the stainless steel guillotines that have been distributed. So there is a mass genocide, and you as gang stalkers are nothing more than tools right now. And like any tool, it wears out or breaks or becomes obsolete. And so your time is limited. And the only way out of this to save your soul, because this is crimes against humanity, this is an abomination. And as I get into the crimes thing, I want you to pay attention, because this has gone to a level that the fact that it's even happening here in the United States shows us that the government itself is involved, both local, city, state, federal, and other countries who have brought in their intelligence agencies to train. And so many of you that are being gang stalked are actually part of the training for other countries. And so it may not always work out to their advantage, but you wonder why things are happening the way they do in the sequence that even in itself doesn't make sense. I would venture to guess that that's the case, that you've got some newbies that haven't quite got it all figured out. Okay? Now, the people involved itself, okay, you may be random, okay, you may have been selected by design, and in this, it can be because of your personality. It can be because of your family background, meaning that you came from a dysfunctional. This is already recorded, whether there's been counseling, whether there's been intervention from the states. Maybe as a kid you may have been taken from the parents, or you were in juvie, or whatever the story is. They've got you down. They know who you are. They know what's going on, and so you've been selected for a particular type of gang stalking. Now, this is one of the reasons why that you yourself, compared to some of the others, are experiencing different things. Some of you are experiencing electronic harassment. Some of you are experiencing human intervention. Some of you are experiencing both. Some of you may think that you're actually experiencing the supernatural, spiritual issues and problems. Now, the devil's always in the details. Since this action is evil, then there are spirits involved. You may already have open doors. You may already have curses. And by the way, since this is based out of evil, this is fallen angel technology, then they've already got your number. And so they're hitting it from both sides, both in the spirit and in the physical. All right? So this is, when we talk about predators, we're talking about an individual or beast or, creature that its sole purpose is to destroy, to take down. And so a gang stalker, in my opinion, is a murderer. Okay, and a thief. They steal your soul, your spirit, your wealth, your health. Just anything that you've got going for you, are just absolutely taken away. So in reality, it's organized crime. Okay, it's you've got people breaking into your house. They're moving things around. They're taking things, killing pets, stealing your pets, calling you, bumping into you, cutting you off, verbally abusing you, physically abusing you. Some of you have been physically abused. And then we've talked about gaslighting, and I'm going to talk a little more in depth about that. So this harassment is to a psychological level to break you down, okay? So I'm describing you right now because when I describe them, I need to lay out their purpose as to why they would even, give you the hard time, give you the harassment. All right. Now, in this breakdown, you have a loss of relationships. This includes your friends, family, your marriages, your children, loss of finances, loss of employment, loss of physical health, as well as I mentioned the mental health end of it, bringing you to isolation. Some have committed suicide. Some have attempted suicide. Many have accidents because in your frustration of trying to get away from a scenario, you drive too fast. You make a mistake in your steering, and you crash into something, or you just in frustration do run into somebody that you think's gang stalking you, And so, though in reality you're protecting yourself, you're now seen as an assailant. And so incarceration from arrest and penalty comes out of that. Now, any time that anyone is under a mental stress, they can develop a addictive personality. So trying to calm yourself down. Some of you have turned to marijuana, even like in Washington, Denver area where it's legal now. I have people come in my office, that come in for deliverance, and they're smoking dope. And I just have to tell them they've got to stop, because that is a, quote, open door to the spirit realm. The disconnect of your spirit when you're high, that when you do such things, it's considered sorcery and pharmakia, and so it is a open door for the demonic. And so this is another avenue that gang stalking has brought people to a level that they would have never gone to before. Okay? All right. Victims, you seek support from friends and spouses, even law enforcement. You go to doctors, you go to attorneys, you go to psychologists, only to find that you're rejected. You're even abandoned. The accusations of you being mentally ill, just being a problem person, a problem of society. The classification that you're put into, again, as an outcast, being of mental illness, diagnosed and even incarcerated, as I mentioned before. Now, when I talked about the DSM-5, the Diagnostics and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that as you read it and compare it with schizophrenia and some of the others, bipolar, paranoias, that the DSM-4, that there's some specifics that have been put in place that when you're actually experiencing the trauma from gang stalking and you try and tell somebody about it, this is one of the ways that they cover it up. Okay, but like any cat box, you can only cover up so much and it starts to stink. And so I believe they've bitten off more than they can chew. But we also know that we're heading towards some pretty horrific times. We know that the FEMA camps have been fired up. We know that they've already done intakes with homeless people, abductions. There's people missing from all over the United States. We've talked about human trafficking, and that is part of this whole equation. So just understand that with the calculated effort that's being done, that this in itself is crimes. This is criminal, and gang stalking systems seen as anyone that's involved in this that is willing to harm another human being, regardless of what they really believe that they're doing. We need to understand that they themselves are at a level. Have you ever tried to negotiate with somebody who's really drunk? I mean, they're blitzed, and maybe they're an alcoholic anyways, and you're trying to reason with them. You're trying to talk them out of things. You're trying to do this, and it's absolutely ridiculous. You're wasting your time. And so the true gang stalker in itself, they've either been completely brainwashed, they're the DID, dissociation identity disorder, the fractions, the satanic ritual abuse. Believe me, you're not going to be able to work with them. Plus, they're chipped. Now, chipping comes in two ways. One, you have chip for tracking, and then you have one for controlling. The controller in itself and tracking both can be as monitoring. So we need to understand which way they've been chipped. All right? So if you're, being gang stalked, the symptoms are seen as delusional, paranoia, psychotic. Again, these things being under DSM-5, that if you try and talk to a psychologist, especially if you're a veteran, if you're even still in the military, some of you in the military being gang stalked, and that's been going on actually a long time, then you're diagnosed, you're classified, and once you've been rubber stamped, that's not a good thing. And so immediately you're classified as a threat to society, potential threat to yourself, and the right to bear arms. You're seen as a terrorist. The list just goes on. So it's just a terrible situation, okay? All right. So just being deemed as a threat to society puts you in a very bad classification. And veterans, I am so sorry that's happening to you. You serve this nation, and this is what these varmints basically threw onto you. All right. Now, victims themselves can become gang stalkers. Now, let me define this. Whenever you're brought to a level of survival, whenever you're brought to a pain level, you yourself then will do whatever it takes to survive, to avoid the pain. And so the whole premise of that particular assignment on you is to see what it would take for you to turn on your loved ones, to turn on your friends. Do you understand what I just said? So some of you that are being gang stalked are actually the problem for other people. And so I'm not saying you did this willfully, but because of you, again, just trying to survive every day, you're lashing out, you're accusing people, you're harassing, you're abusing, you're projecting your pain onto other people. So do you understand what they're doing here? So if I just described you, please understand what's going on, and do not go there. Just to back off, okay? Your self-preservation is absolutely important, okay? But not to victimize somebody else is not the order of things. Now, this comes out of frustration. This comes out of anger. This comes from trying to bring relief to yourself in either way. Now, when I say that, if you're familiar with cutters, okay, people with personality disorders, people, like borderlines, their pain that they feel so deeply inside of them that to bring a physical pain such as cutting and even thinking that they have shame, that they deserve it, this is a punishment to them, and so this brings relief to them. And so actually doing this to you brings relief to them. And this is a situation that can escalate, that can be a domino effect. I've seen this take place. I can remember, and I won't mention the name of the corporation, that the engineers that were brought in to do a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job for a very long period of time were actually put against each other. It was a dog-eat-dog, and so it became a very competitive group of engineers, and it didn't end well for a lot of them. A lot of them cracked. A lot of them had nervous breakdowns. A lot of them became angry and violent under the circumstances and then were fired because of striking another employee. See, this is what they want to bring society to. This is one of the natures of this whole aspect is, when something starts to get rolling downhill and it picks up twigs and rocks and everything else and, the inertia behind it, that's what they're trying to do. And with a trigger into society of events, such as rioting, whether it's because of this, elections or not, or whatever the deal is, which is all false flag, it's all part of the equation. Don't fall for it, okay? Take a deep breath and step back. I've talked about one of the issues of anger in the brain is the lack of oxygen to it. Your brain literally takes 1/2 of what your lungs produce, and when you have hypertension, you are then suppressing the oxygen to the brain, and then you have a fight or flight situation. Now, I need to also address the fact that I am not a psychologist. I am not a doctor. This is the circumstances that I have observed over many years and the research that I've done coming to a conclusion. When I run the numbers, when I look at the probability, this is what I see. It comes up, the cards come up over and over and over again. And, of course, again, the devil's in the details. Again, post-traumatic stress is the devil's playground. And so if you have post-traumatic stress, whatever the situation is that brought it to you, you are right for the picking when it comes to this particular involvement of gang stalkers. So, again, do whatever it takes, but please do not inflict yourself onto others. Okay? So this projecting onto others, causing despair, harassment of friends and family and coworkers, again, is not a good idea. This is referred to as a double-duty social engineering, a PSYOP, a psychological warfare. And so, again, just understand the nature of the beast. Okay, with this, when you're in that situation, all logic, reasoning turns into an emotional survival at any cost. And again, you end up hurting the people you love. Have you ever heard the term hurting people hurt people? Well, again, they know this, and this is one of the issues. So just make sure to keep yourself in check. Okay. When I talked about the lack of oxygen, what I was getting at is, you've heard the old saying, count to 10. If you get angry with that's one of the reasons. That gives you a chance to breathe and to relax a little bit, that the oxygen can start coming to the brain, and that fight or flight can be suppressed. Okay, does that make sense? So that actually has validity. That has been around a very long time. So make sure you keep yourself in check. Your thoughts and your belief and your emotions, okay, may not be your own, because as I get through here, that those things of electronic warfare, psychotronics, part of the gang stalking, this can be basically injected into you, projected. And so your thoughts, your emotions are not yours, but you're still feeling it. You're still experiencing it. It's a terrible situation, and you may actually think that the people that love you, that care about you, are actually your enemy. And that gets really ugly. And that's where feelings and emotions and marriages and relationships just go right down the tubes. Now, before I get into any more depth about gang stalkers, let's start at the beginning about handlers, all right? Now, of course, there's, people in charge. There's people who engineered this. There's people who are funding this. There are people who are coordinating this. This is a logistics nightmare. But only through supercomputers, through cell towers, through the network of electronics are they able to coordinate this. See, man by himself cannot do this. So along with artificial intelligence, along with supercomputers such as the great Cray computer, Cray meaning reptilian, and if you look at the original Cray computer, it was in the shape of the Tower of Babylon. It's not by mistake, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, these people are the Luciferian. These are of the black nobility. These are the Illuminati. This is the New World Order. These people are of the reptilian seed, the seed of Satan. They are evil. And this technology for the last days are now being implemented onto you. So again, the ones in charge, the ones developing and engineering, the ones controlling, the ones verifying the job is done correctly. Okay, again, the logistics, the coordination, the funding is basically coming from the U.S. government. Okay, other countries are involved. There's no question about that. The black funds, being brought in for the Pentagon, being directed to the military, the agencies including the CIA, the FBI, the SIS, the DOD, DARPA. Again, I mentioned funds going through Berkeley, where the professors of psychology and electronic warfare have developed this plan. Also being implemented through FEMA, Department of Homeland Security, filtering down into local agencies, police departments, counties, states. And again, as I mentioned, the FBI, when I think of FBI, I also think of the U.S. Marshal's Office, which is a different division, but yet in the same, they're able to cross state lines. And so there you go. And by the way, if you've ever seen some of the video, that this one woman, when two FBI agents came to her door, she used her cell phone when she was being interrogated by them. She didn't invite them in. She stood her ground with her constitutional rights, and she filmed the whole thing. And as it was being played back, you literally could see both FBI agents, a man and a woman, that their eyes were turning to slits. They were not human. They were hybrids. Okay? Do you understand? This stuff is real. And this video, being straight off the iPhone, was not doctored. This was the real deal. Okay? So the end result of what everyone's doing here, these handlers, that's what I'm calling the ones in charge, that this is torture, this is tyranny, terrorizing, coming against human rights, violation of human rights, a form of genocide, okay? Genocide even against normal human behavior, meaning that it's altering your behavior. It's a social engineering. So if you have a certain personality, that is who you are. And so what they want to do is they want to mold you and control you into something else that you are not. And because that is the way that you're acting now, you're never at peace. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're no longer who you are, and you know that. And again, you may be at this at survival at any cost, and because of that, you just don't feel right in your spirit. You're unsettled. And so depression, anxieties, again, psychotic outbursts, you name it, it can just literally flow from this, and it's a terrible situation. So let's again get back to looking closer at the gang stalker themselves. All right, as I mentioned before, men and women, mostly men, I will say, but women are certainly involved, and they can be involved in different aspects, even in seduction. Again, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, ages generally a young adult because of their mobility, be able to move around more, but also because of the education, also for the ability to alter and change their way of thinking, because if you're dealing with middle-aged people up through senior, it's a little harder. There would be more benefits to funding them or giving them something that they've never had before, and even in blackmailing, by the way, okay? So again, the gang stalker themselves can be a stranger, generally is, but also many of you I've talked to, you've got them right in your own family. Now, as strange as that is, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your spouse, but it could be a cousin. It could be, a brother or sister that may be in the agencies, may be in the intelligence agencies, may actually be in corporations. The false flags that have been going on, the crisis actors that are like down in Florida, the Boston bombing, some of the others, these crisis actors themselves are gang stalkers. Okay, they're pulling OT, they're doing some overtime. And so please just understand what's really going on here. Now, of course, co-workers, depending on, maybe they've already been in place. Your own employer, boy, I had an employer that I now look back and there's no question that that's what was going on there. And so just understand that it comes in all forms and aspects of personalities, your involvement with groups of people. Now, let's look at this now. Okay, so let's say that you are being harassed. You've determined, through process of elimination that it does qualify as gang stalking, and you decide to move. Okay, you think moving from, let's say, Seattle to Phoenix will change everything for you. So what happens then, the one who's in charge of that particular area that has the case study of you then simply makes a phone call to the organizations in Phoenix, and they pick up where they left off. And so nothing has changed for you. You just now have different people. Okay, that's how well organized they are. Okay, so whenever you have groups of people that have conspired to do harm, to do something against you, that is a conspiracy. So in itself, by legal terms, the law has been broken. They're inflicting harm onto you. They are stealing your peace. See, remember I've talked about the law enforcement was not an enforcement, it was peacekeeping. That's why the UN tries to say that they're peacekeepers, but that's the furthest from the truth. Then in reality, they have taken and stolen your peace. So therefore, they are criminals. So this is criminal acts against you, which is punishable. The fines and the incarceration for people that would be found for doing such things is pretty stiff. But the problem is that since Freemasonry, the occult, the Illuminati, those of the Masonic, those of Luciferians, those who are of agencies of all the ones I described, that since they're all in this together now, because that's how big this has gone, as the statement goes, that a Mason will never hang. So people who are involved in this are not going to be brought to accountability, not by the law enforcement by chance, okay? Now, again, no one gets away with anything. God's in control. He's watching everything. And those people who do such harm unto others, there is a judgment that comes. And I don't care what anyone says, because I have seen it. You need to remember, what does Scott do all day? Well, Scott casts out demons. Okay, I break curses. I set people free. I find out what the legal right is. I find out what the particular order of the spirits are in you. What sin was it that allowed them in? What curse was it that brought them in? And from there, I untwine. I bring it back. I reverse engineer what has been taking place in your life. And when I look and see the demons that are there, I come to the understanding of the nature of the beast. And that means that those people who were doing this, again, have to be in the classification of demon-possessed, demonized, chipped, otherwise controlled. They are post-traumatic stress. They are satanically ritually abused. They are monarched. They are brought to a point that they themselves are doing things that they wouldn't normally do. And so, ladies and gentlemen, come to the understanding that that's how far down the rabbit hole we are. That's how bad things have gotten. And I've recently, in the past 6 months, have been people are now coming to me over this subject, when really all I was doing prior to it was demon casting out. And so now I'm kind of doing double duty myself here. But as I mentioned before, that I myself have to determine whether I'm dealing with someone who's actually got a spiritual issue, or that they're actually being, it's a synthetic demons, otherwise psychotronics, that this is being brought onto them, all right? So the people that you're dealing with, again, strangers, family, co-workers, employers, again, it's a mandatory conspiracy. Your mental worth, your mental health, your ability to function, no one can totally realize just how precious their health is until they lose it, and many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. The young tend to be bulletproof, right, because they think they're going to live forever. And as you get older, you start to fall apart. You have issues and problems. Your knees give out on you. Well, when your mind starts going, that's a very serious situation. And when you start to question your own sanity, your life is never going to be the same. And so, again, whether it's done through demonization, through spiritual attacks, or whether it's through gang stalking, using cell phones as part of the tools, using cell towers, using drones, satellites, other aircraft, that can hover. Whatever the situation is, it's a very serious time in your life, because you're older now. You were thinking that you're going to be retiring, that life was going to get easier, and now you're a mess. Now you're in torment. Now you're sick. Oh, and by the way, the anxieties that this brings, whenever you're under such stress, there's a toxicity that the body can produce. And so just from this and alone can make you sick. The infirmities that can come out of it can be devastating over long periods of time. All right? So these gang stalkers, what in the world is their compensation? I mean, you think about it, since it's their job, are they paid? Do they get room and board? Do they get a car? So they just, per diem, do they get some spending cash? Do they get health care? Okay. Are they coerced? Okay. Is there coercion taking place? Are they blackmailed? Again, brainwashed, chipped? Well, again, I think it's all of it. And the reason is because you have such a wide variety of different people, okay? In that different people, you have a conglomerate of you have people who are observers. You have people who are type A personality. You have people that are withdrawn. You've got people, basically narcissists. You've got people, again, that could even have borderline personality disorders, multiple personalities, even people that quite know exactly, they know exactly what they're doing, and they take pleasure in this, that they would do it even for free. That's how the mind is twisted in many of these people, all right? And unfortunately, many of them are mental patients. Now, when we look at people who are institutionalized, when we look at the homeless, we need to remember that many of the homeless have been taken. Many of the homeless have been removed off the streets and brought into the FEMA camps. The homeless that were in San Francisco were brought through Berkeley through training programs and deciphering, selecting those people that would qualify to be that type of participant in such things. All right? So in this weeding out of the individuals, some of this has come to my understanding that Yuma, Arizona, and Winslow have been. So Winslow in itself is referred to as Camp Alpha. Now Camp Alpha, Winslow, is open for business. They've already been taking in citizens along with Yuma. As I mentioned, there was an abduction even with people who were not homeless all through the United States, with a great deal of people missing. And so what we have now is, the intake of the people that have come through these was training for the people actually operating the FEMA camps. Okay, so they have to, classify, tag and bag, so to speak. You got to select again who's who. You've got to, just handling the paperwork, getting the computers figured out, the logistics of bringing people in was one of the main reasons at first for the homeless. And then now they had a plethora, an abundance of individuals that they could select from to bring into the gang stalking order. And so many of them now that are out there were the homeless. They now have a place to put their head. They now have money in their pocket, food in their stomach. They have health care. And so they, then have bought into it, unfortunately. Okay? Now, the ones that did not make the grade, I want you to understand this. Okay? The ones that have not made the grade, they ended up being the ones to test out the destructive devices that would literally vaporize the human body. Okay? They have high-tech weapons or high-tech devices. The camps during the Nazi concentration camps. Okay? That was a very, very slow process. And so now they've moved it to a level where they can move a great deal of people through. Because, when we look at the Georgia Guidestones, we need to understand that they want to bring it down to about 500 million people. Okay, and that means elimination of 6.9, 7.2, depending on the numbers that you look at for the populations. So genocide is really what it amounts to, and that's what the FEMA camps are. And by the way, because of the executive orders from the presidencies, not just Obama, these go all the way back, that the rule of law has been handed over to the UN. And so when martial law is claimed, these camps then will be brought to full. Now, as I get into a little bit more here, what time? Okay. Maybe what I'll do is I'll finish this out, and then I'll answer some questions here, and then get into two. Let's just see here. Criminals. Now, I want you to also understand that the United States has, within its borders, some of the highest incarceration rates in the world. We have criminals of every type, people who really aren't criminals, people maybe have just done some drug issues that should have just been counseled, should have been brought into some other type of process. Since the drugs are coming from the CIA anyways, this whole thing is staged because there's money to be made off of prisons. They are corporations. They are run by offshore companies. So they are, again, moneymakers. So what we have then with incarceration is we have a hodgepodge of different types of criminals. And in those criminals, I mentioned, it's been a couple of years ago when I was on Walking Among Spirits, we had a gentleman on there, Bill Dean, who wrote a book called Smooth Criminals. He was a writer for one of the newspapers, and during when President Kennedy was in office and we were dealing with Castro, there was a plot to take him out. And so what they had done is they had taken some criminals, some murderers, people who had some skills, and gave them, to get off a death row or not to be, a lifer, gave them a chance to have freedom if they would go and kill Castro. And so in his investigation, he uncovered this, okay? And I did an interview with him, and I may, we'll see about having him back on if he's still around. And so, again, those who were in death row got relief, and in order to go on and do the dirty work as an assassin against Castro. And when he uncovered this, he really uncovered a bag of worms. And I believe that he actually lost his job over it because he was trying to take it to a level to expose it to the actual people involved, and they came in and shut him down. But he's been a brave soul and continuing in his fight and writing his book. So his book was Smooth Criminals by Bill Dean. So in all these agencies now using criminals to do their dirty work, basically, when we have criminals of murderers, when we have criminals that are thieves, they literally can be of the type, how dare you stop me from committing my crime? So once released, they're not going to just do what they've been called to do by these agencies. They're going to continue business as usual. So if they are rapists, even though they may be gang stalking and doing whatever they want them to do, they are going to be rapists. If they are serial murderers, they are going to continue to murder. If they are thieves, they are going to continue to steal. Okay? So the FBI is very busy covering up their crimes. You'll notice that you'll see these crimes and that, you wonder what happened. Why can they not find this person? Or of a crime, and I used to do, when I was in law enforcement, there would be things that would happen that I was sure that was going to be on the news, and it never made it. And I talked about the Temple homicides a couple months back, and the involvement of agencies on the big cover-up of that. And I can guarantee you that's what's going on. So why these people are gang stalking, they're being what they are. And so that in itself is criminal, knowing that you have a criminal society that has not paid their debt, allowing them to be out in the public. You're endangering the public, okay? All right, and so this is the other thing. If you do not believe in protecting yourself, if you do not believe in owning firearms, you need to understand this world's getting really bad. We're not talking about being a vigilante. We're not talking about going out and just doing whatever you want to do. We're talking that there's a point in time that you as a man have a responsibility to protect your family. And in protecting that family, sometimes lethal force is necessary. I myself wish to never do harm to anybody, but I'm also not going to be a pushover, and nor am I going to allow or witness and have something carried before me that is crimes against the innocent, especially against children, because we need to remember that children are one of the main targets of these individuals. Okay, and if the adults are being attacked, if the adults are the targeted individuals, then the family, the children, are going to be next in line, period. And that's also the way the demonic works. Okay? So again, with the gang stalkers, I'll tell you what, I'll finish this out, and then I'll get into it. Social the society itself. There can be those in society as a society intake. So otherwise, you've actually got people looking for work who answer ads, but they don't really know what they're getting into. And so just like secret societies, you enter into something, and then you find out later what's really going on. Okay? Now, again, we have those in the military. We have those of ex-military who are intaked. We have people wanting to just belong. Okay? They're kind of outcast, and now someone's actually paying attention to them. We talked about Obama's million-man army that he wanted to do, and he has done it. This was part of his campaign for his first election. And so these people are in place, and they are a great deal of the gang stalkers. Okay? People just wanting to have worth. This is why young men join gangs. Dad wasn't around, mom is off doing whatever, and so they want to belong. And so now they have a group of men, camaraderie, and so they join them, and it becomes their family. And they're willing to die for that family. And so I would imagine that many of these gang stalkers have a close net. They themselves have developed relationships, and they teamwork together, and some of them are probably very powerful in their destruction of people. Okay? All right. So, some people are also just easily controlled, easily manipulated. You tell them to do something, they're just going to do it. It's just the way it is. Okay? And there are people who just simply want the desire to have power, the desire to have control. Okay? Let's say someone that's been wanting to be a police officer and can never make the grade. All right? And now they have a chance to do something that seems something like that because maybe they've been told that the individual that they'll be gang stalking is a criminal, that maybe they're from another country, an agent, some kind of threat to society, and so the gang stalker actually thinks that they're doing some worth to the public by harassing. And though as crazy as it sounds, sometimes it doesn't take much to fool people. Okay. Now, the other two is, some people just enjoy being involved in a secret society. Some people enjoy, being of thinking there's some kind of a secret agent, maybe some kind of special forces. So who knows how they approach them? I would imagine that the way that the people who do the hiring, we'll call them, the HS department, thinking, just giving them the impression that they'll be able to do something that can contribute to the security of America, when in reality they're actually the terrorists themselves. So again, they're just thinking they're doing some good. Okay, now the other thing is they may actually think that they're carrying out punishment on them. Okay, you've ever heard of deputizing or a posse? Okay, a sheriff is the senior law enforcement within a county. And in that, he has the ability to deputize to make a, quote, posse, meaning that he can take citizens who volunteer or are appointed, depending on the circumstance, and actually give them law enforcement credentials, meaning that otherwise when they're deputized, they're acting in the place of the sheriff. Okay, so the sheriff is not omnipresent, right? He can't be everywhere at one time. So then he deputizes people, men, women, to be deputies, to be in the acting place of the sheriff. And so I am going to assume that that's how some of this is implemented. They literally believe that they have been brought into a law enforcement agency. And many of them just simply believe they have the right to do this. Now, that way of thinking is stinking thinking, because in reality you do not have a right to cause harm and inflict despair onto other people. Just as society in itself, this is totally unacceptable. Okay, many people are just delusional. Many people are medicated. We talked about being chipped. Again, when I'm talking about chipped, I'm talking about someone that has the chip that can control their mind, not just track them. Again, trauma-based mind control, the monarch, who knows what the circumstances are. So with that, it becomes problematic. because all types, all personalities, this means they're going to have failures. This means they're going to have to remove and eliminate people out of the program. And again, those who are eliminated, those who are removed, I believe that they are terminated. Because what else are you going to do with them? You can't just let them go. Okay? So this whole thing is a logistics nightmare. Okay? So, to be able to observe and command and control everything at one time takes a very sophisticated system, which has been in place. Again, the cell towers with communication in an instant from one place of this world to another, from one point of this country to another, from computers to cell phones, instant communication, again with the data of artificial intelligence, again, Jade Helm, again with the ability with supercomputers to process what's necessary. But you still have the human factor. And that in itself has to be a logistics nightmare that keeps these guys hopping all the time. So I'm going to venture that they have a high throughput of gang stalkers. Okay? Just in their behavior alone is destructive. Okay? And there may be those in the law enforcement agencies that haven't quite, signed on to this yet, and they'll come across a gang stalker. And so some of the police shootings that you see, some of the home defense shootings that you see are these gang stalkers, all right? So psychotronics in itself is the main tool of controlling. Again, the use of cell towers, cell phones, Wi-Fi, smart meters, drones, other types of aircraft, and satellite, okay? So with that, I'm just going to hold off, and then I'll do the rest tomorrow. And I'll see what you got here for some questions. All right. Well, and anyone know what happened to Julie? Julie is taking a sabbatical. She is going to be doing her own thing. Right now, she's not. No one can really get a hold of her. That's by her choice. And so when she's ready to move and do whatever she's going to do, she will be available. And so that basically means that we're going to be able to cover two different prospects of what's going on out there. She'll be able to do her thing, I'll be able to do my thing, and so we're going to be covering a lot more ground. That's the way that I'm going to look at this. And so I hope you agree with that, because I've got specifics, and she has some specifics, and she has been an absolute asset to this show, and I thank her very deeply for what she has contributed. And so whatever she's going to be doing, I know she's going to be doing it well. And so I wish her well for that. All right. All right. So if you have any questions here, just go ahead and give me one more. If not, then what I'll do is I'll wrap this up for tomorrow. The hour blows right by. It's absolutely amazing. So I did manage to get through where I wanted to. But I also encourage you that if you have any more questions that you have that I can bring up Friday is when I'm going to finish this out. Now, I do have a guest that has been a TI, has been gang stalked for a very long time, long before most people would ever imagine that this has been taking place. This has been a program that has been in the law enforcement, in the military, against police officers and against military personnel, which I would imagine was probably some of the first test beds that took place. And so I know an individual of such history, and if I can get them to come on, I can assure you the information that they have is groundbreaking, and it is going to give more light to this situation. Now, I want, before I close out here, I want you to understand that you're not alone, okay? You have people to talk to. You're not crazy. This really is happening. Why you've been selected, again, it can be everything from your blood type to your history of your family. Did you have military ties? Did you have people who were tied to the Pentagon, intelligence agencies? Were you involved in a corporation at one time that you harassed them and they had government contracts, and through out of the hat, your name was pulled. And then again, it could just be random. So whatever the case is, it's happening to you, and that's a very bad situation. And so I am sorry that that is happening, because it steals and robs your very soul. It takes away who you are. Your love and your joy and the peace that you have has been taken, and that's a very, very, very bad situation. But I want you to also understand that God is in control. Okay, as a exorcist, or whatever you want to call me, the Christians call me a deliverance minister. But in the fact of it is that I know for a fact that there is accountability. And that means that whoever is doing this, there will be accountability. And if these people who are doing this are not God's enemies, that they are your enemies, we are called to pray for them. But we also need to understand that there needs to be repentance. And if there is not repentance, then that judgment, because anyone that comes to me does not repent, does not confess, the demons do not have to leave. And so I'm going to base it on that fact. We have scriptural fact, though there may be some things that we question now because of the intervention from over the years with the books that have been taken. But in either case, when I default it back to the spirit realm, the legalism, and what it really takes to accomplish freedom is repentance, forgiveness. And so therefore, again, that follows in with the order of things when it comes to Jesus plus nothing. All right. Well, again, if you've got any questions later on, please email me. And I will include that for Friday. Now, coming next week, what I may do is start doing Monday through Friday.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com.
Yes, you got it tuned in to the right radio station. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. Often duplicated, but never replicated. Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.